Today the topic given is practicing the bodiless stage. And it was also told to me that you are interested in the subject of surrender. Am I right? Yes? So I have some questions for you. And the first one is, how many of you feel clear about how to meditate, how to do yoga? So that's not very many. So I'm going to take up this part as part of the practice of the bodiless stage, because one of the definitions of yoga is exactly this, practicing to be bodiless. I would also like to look at a definition of bodiless, because obviously we are here with bodies. And we're not trying to leave our bodies so that people would have to deal with them, So bodiless has a very specific meaning that's not necessarily clear just by using the English word bodiless. And Baba uses a number of different words which we translate as bodiless. For example, the Hindi word for a body is sharir, and bodiless is ashariri or ashariri sthiti, the bodiless stage. And we use this word stage quite a bit. For example, we say we want to create our stage, or we say, I am trying to develop a bodiless stage. So that means we also need to look at this word stage. What do we mean by stage? Is it helpful for you if I go into these definitions like this? Because the terminology that we use is unusual in the sense that we may be using quite basic words, but the meaning that we assign to those words is very uncommon, because we're talking about spiritual things, and the language that we use has been developed in consideration of physical things. I'll give you an example. We talk about our soul as an it, right? My soul. We say my soul, like we could say my foot. And now my foot is part of my body. There isn't anything like my soul, because I am the soul. But we say my soul anyway, right? Even if we think of ourselves in physical terms, and we give ourselves an identity within the BK world, and we say, I am a student, or I am a sister, or something like this. This is also considering oneself as a thing. Object consciousness. And so part of the practice of being bodiless is to move oneself away from thinking of oneself as an object. I know, for example, women in the world that we live in, which is in many respects still what we call a male-dominated world. Very often women will say, you are thinking of me as an object. and I'm not an object, I'm a person. Yeah? And so even we want to go a little bit further, because still a person implies in your mind, in your mind's eye, is still a physical body. So there are some kinds of exercises that can be done to help us to go through some specific stages to move from the sense of being an object to the sense of being a being which is non-physical. I'm sure you must have seen an X-ray of your chest or some other bit of your body. Is that right? Anybody never seen an X-ray of part of their body? Even in the dentist they show you an X-ray of some tooth that they're about to do something to. Yeah? So you can imagine your skeleton, can't you? Now it takes a very expert person to distinguish between a male skeleton and a female skeleton. Right? Part of body consciousness is gender consciousness. So an exercise of thinking of yourself as a skeleton, you're still dealing with your physical body, or at least the framework of it, but it takes you pretty far away from gender. If you think of your skeleton, it's very difficult to be arrogant about your skeleton, because it doesn't have very much in sense of a load attached to it. You can't very easily identify with it and compare your skeleton with somebody else's, that your bones are whiter or, denser or something like this than another person, I see. So if you just consider your skeleton, it's quite easy to connect yourself with your skeleton and know in your intellect that your skeleton is inside a leather bag known as your skin. Is it not? It's a leather bag, and that's your skin. And in between there are some bones, some fat, and some various tubes with different fluids passing through them. This is your body. But when we say do not be body conscious, we're not really talking about do not be conscious of the anatomy of your body. So when we say body conscious, we mean something different. When we say bodiless, we also mean something different. So going back to the idea of thinking of your skeleton, if you think of your skeleton, practically speaking, it puts you into a soul-conscious stage, because you don't have any history of identifying with just the skin and bones, because it doesn't have any meaning that has a connotation that makes you materialistic in your behavior. You see what I mean? Are you following me all right? Yes? So, one thing is this aspect of bodilessness that means genderless. Because bodiless means I am not a man, I am not a woman. So if we use the word she, it's referring to a physical object, a female body. If we use the word he, it's referring to a physical object, a body of the male style. And you only have two possibilities. You could have a male type or a female type, and it comes in a variety of colors. And so genderless, the symbol for genderlessness is Vishnu. Okay? I don't know, we don't have a picture of Vishnu here, but you've all seen a picture of Vishnu. And it is said for us that our aim and object is to become Vishnu, that is to say, genderless. And genderless also means androgynous. Androgynous means that you are no more or no less female than you are male. Right? Anyway, a soul comes with a body. We are studying these things together with our bodies. And part of bodilessness in respect of genderlessness means I'm adopting an attitude which is not limited by the female body that I'm in or the male body that I'm in. So bodilessness means to transcend limitations that may be imposed by the physical body that you happen to inhabit currently. From the point of view of the intellect, which is the repository of the human consciousness that holds knowledge. Right? The intellect holds information, and the mind has feelings about it. So you have information, I am neither male nor female. That's in your intellect. In your mind, you have to give your mind a little test or a little duty and say, how do you feel? Or say to the self, how do I feel about being neither male nor female? Right? That is bodiless. You have a body, but neither male nor female. That means bodiless. Do you see what I mean? You're not limited by, I'm a man or I'm a woman. And also you're not limited by the color possibilities from black or white or brown or yellow or any mixture of any of those. You see, these are attributes of the body, but if I'm neither male nor female, neither black nor white nor brown nor any of those other things, you're beginning with your intellect to disidentify with your leather bag containing a good structural foundation that enables you to walk around and do the things that bodies are for. So bodiless doesn't mean that you're rejecting your body or you're trying to be, a soulless body, because that's another way you can go. But you want to be a soul who is not limited by any of the limitations that arise due to having spent so many years being used to being a body, so many lifetimes, you see. Now sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to talk to the Chinese souls. I say, excuse me, you can't do that. There aren't any. Right? Or the Spanish souls. It can't be, but this is a word that nationality applies to the body. So we use the word Spanish souls, English souls, French souls, but we can't. So we have to, if we're going to use strange words, we have to also get them right, I see. And if we want to get it right, we get into all sorts of long, convoluted labels, like the souls who live in French-speaking bodies. which is very, convoluted to say. So, if we start using that kind of language, the vibration that comes off of that is very body conscious, even though it applies to soul consciousness. Do you see what I mean? So we can't do that because it's so, artificial and awkward. Now that means to say, the proof of our bodilessness does not lie in an alteration of our use of language. We can continue to use the same language that we always have used. So where does the difference lie? Or is there any area in our language where the difference can be indicated without it seeming very artificial and stilted? You see? So it has to do then with a sense of self. Another meaning of body conscious is when we have false ego. And this is coming a little bit closer, I think, to the bodiless stage that we're trying to practice here. And we want to articulate it very clearly because we can't practice something that we're not sure what it is. So then we have to look at body conscious being in a state of false ego, and in contrast to that, bodiless being in a state of true ego. And true ego is usually represented by the term self-respect. So false ego is on one side of the contrast, and self-respect on the other side of the contrast. So when another person is speaking to you as an object, as opposed to speaking to you as a soul, you can feel it. Am I right? Yes? Can you give me a bit more clear indication that you can feel it? Like wave or something? Yeah. That means to say that your intuition is what you're using. Because you're not using your five senses to feel that someone is speaking to you with an attitude that you are an object. So you trust this intuition, right? And that person may deny it if you challenge them on it, but you still feel that, yes, I do trust my instincts. I know whether they accept it or not. I know that this person thinks of me as a mere object. I use the word mere object because when somebody is talking to you in that way and you feel something, it's always that that person is looking at you less than what you know that you are, right? So you know you are a person, you have your self-respect, and somebody is talking to you as a mere whatever, right? And there's a vibration about that, you pick it up, and you have a reaction to it. That reaction is called body consciousness. Right? The fact that they are looking at you as a body or an object, that's their body consciousness, that's not your problem. But the way you react to it, that's your body consciousness, that is your problem. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you cannot practice for somebody else's problem. You have to practice for your own problem. So when a person has self-respect, when a person is in the bodiless stage, the proof of that is that that reaction is not provoked by an attitude that would provoke it if you were body conscious. Right? So the way in which we check ourselves, whether or not I am body conscious or whether I am really bodiless, is in the emotions that we experience when somebody communicates something to us in a way that is demeaning. Right? Have you got it? Are the translators okay with my funny English? Yes? So this is really what we're dealing with. It's something very subtle for which we have quite gross or quite limited vocabulary. And so it's very important for us to be able to interpret the words that we're using so that we assign a certain meaning to these words within our BK world, so we're all on the same page and we know what we're talking about. Because if we interpret the words in a way that they are not intended, then we will understand it in such a way that it's a misunderstanding, which means that we won't be able to practice it in the way that we could be practicing. So what I'm trying to do here is to describe this thing very specifically so that it's easier for you to check yourself and easier for you to practice when Baba says you need to have a greater practice of bodilessness. And you heard in Baba's message this morning, this is one of the things that he said, you need to have more practice of bodilessness. So another synonym for bodiless is humble. But very often we find the word humble is used to mean or indicate somebody who is lacking in self-respect. And because of that, there's a big misunderstanding. Because in BK language, when we say self-respect or when we say humble, it means the same thing. In the body-conscious world, when you say self-respect, it means ego in the sense of a sense of superiority. And when you say humble, it ends up meaning ego in the sense of a sense of inferiority. Same word, totally different meaning. How do you tell what's going on? I think we have to rely more and more on our intuition. So, when you're really being bodiless, your intuitive sense of what is humility contains all of the attributes of self-respect. And so when you're feeling yourself and you're being in touch with yourself on the inside, or you're talking to yourself, or you're trying to describe to yourself in your own language where you are, what you're feeling, what your condition is, you have to use words, but those words have to have that meaning that has the feeling that corresponds to when you feel really spiritually strong. Are you with me? Yes? So, being bodiless is connected with feeling spiritually strong. Now let's talk a little bit about how do we practice this. Okay? Let's go to our Amrit Vela. We all have in mind that we should practice meditation at Amrit Vela every day. Yes? Am I right? Anybody doesn't like that idea? Right? So you can meditate at Amrit Vela in a number of different locations. And we always recommend, based on our experience, that it's a good idea to have Amrit Vela in a large gathering with somebody conducting it, that you can look at or not, as the case may be. But you're in that atmosphere where there is quite a lot of people who are trying to be bodiless and who are trying to absorb light from Shiv Baba. Yeah? And Amrit Vela is a time when, physiologically you are the most disconnected from your body. Because when you're asleep at night, it is called bodiless. And Baba has said the soul detaches from the body, and this is called sleep. So when you wake up very early in the morning, you don't wake up kind of all the way. You wake up enough to get yourself dressed and clean your teeth and appear in the meditation room, but you don't come all the way so that you're worldly. You see, you still keep yourself as detached as possible. So you have low light, and you don't talk, and you try to not get involved with anybody until after Amrit Vela. So this is how we like to do it. And then you sit in such a way that you can go into deep silence without falling asleep. A lot of people fall asleep in Amrit Vela. So when you fall asleep in Amrit Vela, this is called body consciousness. When you are asleep, you're disconnected from your body, detached from your body. But if you fall asleep in Amrit Vela, that means you have gone off in the direction of body consciousness, because there is a kind of a drag on the soul, the heaviness of the body, the impact of matter on the soul that kind of drags it down, and this makes you fall asleep at the time when you need to be really awake. And therefore you need to struggle. Different people will struggle with this in different ways. But, the heaviness or the grossness of body consciousness that has been accumulated over many, many births is something of a legacy that you have to deal with, especially in the early stages of your practice or your pilgrimage of Raj Yoga. And so sometimes in the early stages or the early years, you may have to tussle with this thing for a few years. And so there is great merit in not giving up. Because you have to resist this drag of materialism. It's like a heaviness, you can use the word tamo pradhan. There is this tamo aspect of the body that just will not allow you to experience bodilessness. So you have no choice, you have to struggle with it. You can struggle with it by using coffee, by sticking pins in yourself, whatever it takes. I'm not recommending any of those, but this is some of the things that people may decide to do. And then you get to another point, once you've got through that you find your condition gradually shifts over the years from this tamo pradhan or tamo state to a more rajo state. And eventually you become really subtle, so that you're able to be fully aware and fully detached, absolutely concentrated and absorbing pure light from Baba. And this is the ideal Amrit Vela. You see? And in order to get there, you have to be prepared to put in time to do that. And so if you are patient, this is very good, because it does take patience. And Maya will come along and mess you around by making you think that you're supposed to reach the perfect stage within about 3 weeks, right? Doesn't work like that. You just have to be patient and keep at it for as long as necessary. So if you are wanting to develop a bodiless attitude towards your Amrit Vela, that means you're patient. And that you make a commitment to yourself that I will reach that stage, however long it takes, whatever it takes, but I will do that, you see. And this is also known as firm determination. A combination of the patience that however long it takes, so be it, and the determination that I will not give up, you see. This is very important. And body consciousness will make you feel that you can't keep it up. Whereas a bodiless attitude towards being unable to be bodiless is to say, no, I'm going to keep on going until I get there. And I'm not going to give up. Do you see what I mean? Does this make sense to you? We're also taught not to compare ourselves with other people, because you have no clue what's going on in somebody else's head. And so your meditation, your Amrit Vela, is a very private, personal, individual, in a sense, isolated thing that's just between you and yourself. Or you can say it's between you and Baba. And whatever any comments may be made to you about your Amrit Vela, you just be detached about it. There are certain meanings of falling asleep in Amrit Vela. One of them is karmic. If a person has a lot of negative karma, it will present itself as you're unable to stay awake in Amrit Vela. And so again, you apply patience and you apply determination that I will get through this at any cost. Because the time when your karmic accounts are getting settled is really Amrit Vela. And so therefore the maximum amount of resistance to yoga will take place during Amrit Vela. And one of the forms of resistance is falling asleep due to karma. What I mentioned earlier is due to just the heaviness of materialism. Then there's karma. And then the other thing is, what happens in Amrit Vela is that if you can manage to be sufficiently awake to be awake for it, then all hell may break loose in your head. Am I right? And you will think about everything else except Shiv Baba. Yes? Because these are all aspects of negative karma that come up and they do not want to be removed. your negative karma will present itself as waste thoughts or negative thoughts during Amrit Vela. So you have this mental battling. So one is the physical battling, then you have mental battling, or you may have emotional battling, in which you remember how somebody has just distressed you over the last 10 years, and that's all you can think about in Amrit Vela, right? And then by the time it becomes 4:45, you haven't actually had an Amrit Vela, because you've been busy dealing with those things, you see. But do not worry about that, because this is normal, and there's nothing particularly sort of bad about that. It's just the terrain that you're dealing with. You need to know this, that you have to just get through it and get past it, because those things do die down if you're patient and if you have firm determination. Now, your stage of bodilessness is very much connected with your study. So the daily routine that Baba has created for us, starting with Amrit Vela, followed by freshening up, getting ready for study. Those who do meditation before the study are in the small minority, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's very good. Because you're really trying to accumulate as much yoga power as you can. It's very good. When you're listening to the Murli, there are many ways to listen to the Murli. And the way that I find very good is to listen in such a way that the point that Baba is expressing, you take it on board and you experience it, you feel it, you identify with it, you take it in. And it is, in one Murli there's about 300 points. And that means, technically, you're able to position yourself in 300 different mental poses during the hour or so of the duration of the Murli. And the shifting from one pose to another, he says, sweet children, so you feel sweet. Whether you think you're sweet or not doesn't matter. He says you're sweet, so might as well be sweet for 1 second. And then be soul conscious. So be soul conscious for the duration of that point. And then he says, and remember your Supreme Father, Supreme Teacher, Supreme Satguru. So you have a relationship to practice. What is your pose in regard to Baba as your father? What is your pose in regard to him as your teacher? Your pose in regard to him as your Satguru. And of course, there's going to be many points where you say, well, I don't know. If you are experiencing that question within yourself, you say, well, I don't know if I'm Sita and he's my one Ram, because I don't know who Sita is and I don't know who Ram is, and why do we have to have Ram and Sita anyway since they belong to the Silver Age, So what can happen in your mind at that time is that you lose the next 15 points. So okay, you lost that. Then you catch up with it. You see, I'm just saying this is what goes on in the mind of a BK during the time of listening to the Murli. And there are things that happen in your mind as you listen to the different points where you lose the track. Yeah? Even it could be something like your translation stops working or you disagree with something or whatever, but it makes you break the continuity and break the track. So what you need to try to do is restore the track as soon as you can, because what you lost you can't get back again. So part of the difference between being body conscious and being bodiless is if you're body conscious, you get irritated by having your track lost. And if you're bodiless, you wake up to the fact that you better get with what's happening right now. And you do that. And you let what's lost be lost, because there's nothing else you can do. The murli is running, you can't stop it. You can't say, oh, excuse me, I missed the last 10 minutes because I was bothered about something, could you please repeat it? No. Everybody is having some different thing going on during different moments of the murli. But the key thing is to try to bring yourself to the point where the words that are being spoken penetrate at a very deep level so that they take the form of an experience. This experience that you take on while listening to the murli is the thing that creates a shift in your consciousness. So obviously most BKs most of the time are pretty body conscious. That's okay, nothing wrong with that. The point is to use whatever is at our disposal to bring ourselves into moments of soul consciousness. And the murli is a very good one, because anyway you have to come and sit down and sit there. And anyway somebody's going to be reading it. Right? And whether that person is soul conscious or not doesn't really make any difference to anything. The thing that's important is that the words come from the mind of God. And they're spoken through Brahma Baba and then put on a piece of paper and then read by some BK. But they're still coming from the mind of God. So they're not human words. They're divine words. And they're very, very simple. But they're not human. We take in 24 hours a day sounds that come from the human world. Messages. It could be not just only things people say to us, but things we read, things we hear on the media. Many different auditory information comes in. All of it is materialism driven. All of it is using language in a materialistic way. And all of it is consciously or unconsciously designed to make us body conscious. There's only one thing that we get which is designed to make us soul conscious, and that's the murli. If we listen to the murli in body consciousness, it neutralizes its effect. So we have to try to listen to the murli in a bodiless stage. That means we have to be very receptive. Being receptive to the murli means being open to it. So we have to use each point of the murli to bring us into that consciousness where I, the soul, am receptive to concepts that are coming into me, that come directly from the mind of God, and they make me more soul conscious. So if he says, you are Sita, and I say, who is Sita? I don't know. Who is Sita? You lose time. I see. So this is why we keep on listening to Murlis day by day. One fine day, you're going to have to make it a point to say to yourself, okay, if he says I'm Sita, then I need to check this thing out and see what is involved in being Sita. So one thing is studying the Murli, listening to it, and the other is studying the Murli in the sense of researching outside of the time when you're listening to the Murli. And researching could be asking somebody who's more experienced or whatever, reading some stuff. But you have to figure out a relationship between yourself and this concept of Sita. You see? So somebody has to tell you the story of the Ramayana. So I hope you've all heard the story of the Ramayana. Yes? Anybody not ever heard the story of the Ramayana? Okay, so you ask your teacher to tell it to you. And if they don't know it, then you ask them to find it out. Or you ask somebody here to tell it. Because it's a long, long story. And it's a legend. We need to understand how Shiv Baba uses legend and myth to help us to get a shortcut to a mentality that he's referring to. So mostly the BKs come from India, and mostly they come from a Hindu background, and mostly they heard the story of Ram and Sita growing up. And different parts of India interpret it in different ways, but there's more or less consensus on what it is. But in a nutshell, Ram represents God, and Sita represents the soul. And the relationship between the soul and God has been damaged. And the Ramayana is about how it got damaged, how it continues to get damaged, and what has to be done to fix it. That's what the Ramayana is about. So, when Shiv Baba says, I am Ram, it means he's saying, I am God. And he's not just saying, I am God, God, but he's saying, I am the object of your devotion. Sita means the soul whose meaning of life is focused on trying to reconnect with God. So the whole thing about being bodiless has to do with exploring and developing our relationship with God. So in order for us to be bodiless, we have to think, okay, what is my relationship with God? Now, when it's connected with the Ramayana, you're bringing into your relationship with God a poetic dimension. And poetry is very important for the soul because it's about feelings, it's about intensity of feelings. Now when you're very body conscious, the intensity of your feelings has to do with experiencing negative emotions. So the thing that we call body consciousness in BK language is greed, anger, attachment, lust and ego, right? The 5 vices. So whenever we're experiencing an emotion, it's likely to be a negative emotion. And it could be greed, anger, lust, attachment or ego. Now the thing is, If you're experiencing a negative emotion and you look at these 5 things and you'll say, well, I'm not experiencing any of those. I'm experiencing an intense emotion. But it's not any of those 5 vices. I see. So this is called denial. It is highly likely to be one of those or a combination of those vices, but we might not be able to make contact with it unless we use a few other type of words to try to figure out, to try to explore, okay, what is it that I'm feeling? And is it a positive thing or a negative thing? And what am I supposed to do with it, or what are my options to do with this intense feeling? So in Gyan we say that the intense emotions that people feel are rooted in these 5 vices. So the 5 vices means negative emotions. Now you may be feeling sorrow, right? Bottomless sorrow, which is motivated by something from the Murli. Have you experienced that? Yes? Anybody? I don't believe you. Because what does the Murli do is it will touch delicate areas, wounded areas, and it will provoke negative emotions. How many of you get irritated when Baba says lust is your greatest enemy? You say, oh, I don't have any lust. What is this? Right? It means you do. And he's touching it, and you are having the mentality that you don't have any. You're jolly well celibate and leave me alone now already, right? But it's there, you see. So the Murli will force the emotion associated with the vice to the surface of your consciousness because you have to deal with it. And you may say, well, that makes me more body conscious. Okay, it may seem to make you more in contact with your body consciousness, but it doesn't actually increase the amount of your body consciousness. It's already there, but you can't feel it. And when you can't feel it, then you will conclude very reasonably that it doesn't exist, you see. And then one of the things that people like to do is to suppress negative emotions on the grounds that if they're adequately suppressed to the point where you don't feel them, then it means that they don't exist. And this is why Baba has to provoke them using the Murli or the time of Amrit Vela, when all of this stuff will just come bubbling up to the surface. And this is why the practice of bodilessness is also connected with the practice of Amrit Vela, of finishing off all of your sins. And even you might not like this terminology of sins. You say, well, I don't want to think of myself as a sinner because that's too Christian, you know? Something like that. But whatever word you want to put on it, there is a negative emotion, a body consciousness that is needing to be purged. And so the word purged or the word purified, it's basically the same thing, you know. It means you want it to come out. Or another way of looking at it is you want it to be neutralized. Because a strong negative emotion disturbs you, and suppressing it doesn't make it go away. Venting it only increases it. What you need to do is make it neutral. So how do you make it neutral? That means your relationship with that emotion is that you are neutral about it. So, bodiless also has this meaning that your relationship with a strong negative emotion is neutral. That means to say, you're using the power of tolerance and the power of accommodation when a strong negative emotion surges within you, in the form of it surges as a wave, right? And the wave of negative emotion will have a physiological impact, and it will create some hormones, it will make you cry, it will change your temperature, it may make you have a red face, it will do all sorts of physiological things over which you have no control. Are you experienced in that? So being neutral about a wave of negative emotion means that by the power of yoga, which is an accumulated thing over a long period of time, but by the power of yoga, you're able to bring to bear a very subtle force that calms this wave as it comes up and just makes it disappear. It's not being suppressed, it's not being vented, but it's disappearing. Almost like you're applying alkaline to an acid and neutralizing it. So this thing is called power of yoga. And power of yoga is an energy that's very, very subtle. The energy of the emotions, the negative emotions, is not subtle at all. It's very gross. And you neutralize this gross thing with a very subtle energy, sometimes also called power of silence. Right? So power of silence doesn't mean that you are rigidly suppressing your thoughts and feelings. That's not power of silence. That's denial or suppression, oppression, repression, any of these things. And it will not work because the energy of your body consciousness, the energy of the negative emotions is always going to be stronger than that. Your willpower, which is what you're using to suppress these things or keep them under control, is a product of your body consciousness. And so you cannot extinguish a fire by dousing it with petrol. It's just going to increase the intensity of it. So that's no use. So there's no point in doing that. You have to apply some different thing. So, power of yoga is related to practice of bodilessness. You see, we are dealing with something very, very subtle, so we have to go about it step at a time and a little bit slowly. So again and again you go back to the beginning. Alright, what is silence? What is the power of yoga? So we've got the negative emotions that we're wanting to neutralize, and then the other thing that Baba has talked to us about is called volcanic yoga. Right? Many people really enjoyed the volcanic yoga bhattis of the past couple of years and continued them on. What is volcanic yoga? Well, one thing I think we need to try to find is within your heart, can you make contact with your love for Baba? So let's try that. So your love for Baba is something that you experience very, very rarely, because it's the most intense of all possible experiences. It's a peak experience. Most of the time we are not having extreme experiences. And it's normal for people not to be having extreme experiences. You can't handle it. Anyway, if you brought yourself to an extreme state of experience and maintained it at all times, you'd kind of get burned out within 3 minutes. So it's not practical. But you need to be able to go there at least once in a while. Because what you do is you touch the part of yourself that's invincible, unbreakable, unshakable. Think about a soul. A soul is forever. Each and every one of us, we have to be so right with ourselves that we can live with ourselves forever. Do you see what I mean? That's the most important thing, is that I am right with myself. Yeah? And then Baba is truth. It is said, God is truth. And you have to be able to find that place in yourself that's real. And your relationship with truth. That means you come to your realness and you make contact with His realness, and there is truth. It's not easy to put such a thing into words, because they're always a substitute for that thing itself. But I think the effort to become bodiless is also the effort to go to that point. And once you have touched that point, you are indestructible. Until you touch that point, you can be manipulated, you can be coerced, you can be made afraid, you can be corrupted, any of those things. Maya has total freedom to fool with you as much as she wants. Once you have touched that point, you're in a position to take out Maya. So going to that point is very, very important. And we need to be able to take as much time as it takes to get to that point. You could say that that is the object of our pilgrimage, And one way of putting it is, find the place inside your heart where you have love for Baba, which is also, I think, the place in your being where you recognize Baba. I'm assuming everybody here has recognized Baba in some degree or another. But we need to go there, to that place where at some point in our lives we have said, yes, this is him. Yeah? So you remember. Now, how does a person recognize Baba? I think that it's not possible to recognize Baba by yourself. I think that he allows us a moment of vision where we can see him. What do you think? I don't think we're capable of recognizing God. If we were, we would have done it a long time ago, and so would everybody else, But there's something sort of strange took place in all of us at some time. Either we did it quickly or we did it slowly, but whatever it was, we got to a point where we said, yes, this is it. And then after that, Maya says, no, it wasn't. And depending on how acute and intense your moment of feeling, yes, this is it, your touching of that point, this becomes the foundation of your faith. So faith is a very important ingredient in victory. It is said, if you have faith, at the time of destruction you will be victorious. And then if you have doubt, at the time of destruction you will be destroyed. So doubt is when Maya is successfully able to convince you that you never had that faith. And faith is where you tell Maya to just get off your back, and you go again and again, as much as you can, to that place where the faith took birth in order to sustain that faith and build that faith and make it powerful. And so whenever you're listening to the Murli and experiencing the reality of the points that you're hearing, what you're doing is sustaining that faith. Because each of the points that Baba gives us in the Murli are true. But we have to be able to feel the truth of those things. And every time we do that, it's a reinforcement of faith. And if we do not do that, then Maya will very easily be able to take us out. Very easily, because you have no defense. You need to understand Maya very well. You need to understand God very well. And it's a big process. When you're listening to the Murli and he says, sweet children, if you're in body consciousness, you don't like that expression because you don't want to be considered as a small person, right? A child. You say, I'm not a child, I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself, blah, blah, blah. When he says sweet children, and you experience what it is to be Son of God, and you may see what was the feeling in relation to God of somebody like Christ who said, okay, I'm Son of God, with power. Can you do the same thing? Can you go to the same place and say, I am Son of God, get off my back, And it's an expression of truth because you know it, you feel it, you are it, you're connected. And that faith cannot be destroyed because whenever he says sweet child or anything to do with you being a child or him being the father, you go there again. You make it strong. You see what I mean? This is bodiless. I see. And anything inside us, whether it's laziness, for most people it's laziness, you can't be bothered to go there again and again, because it's work to do that. You can't just sit in the Murli, sit in the Murli, okay. No. You have to really make the effort to be concentrated. One of the meanings of the word yoga, or the words that is used in Hindi for yoga is dhyan, Dhyan sometimes means you go in trance, that is also dhyan. And dhyan also means pay attention. And the practice of dhyan is the practice of meditation. So dhyan means you're very intentionally focused on being a bodiless soul, and you're taking in what is being told to the soul by the Supreme Soul, so that you can experience what it means to be in relationship with the Supreme Soul. And this is why we listen to the Murli in the morning. Now when you read the Murli at home alone, you may not do that. You just read it like you read the newspaper. It's not going to work. So the timetable that Baba has given us to sit and sit in the class and listen to someone reading the Murli in soul consciousness, and you listening to the Murli in soul consciousness, and you making yourself experience the different things that he's speaking about. And if you can do that for each and every point of the Murli, it'll be very difficult for you to be body conscious for the rest of the day, because you will have done it in such an intentional and intense way. And you would have reinforced your experience of your faith to such a point that you can remember it, and that you can be in the experience of it, even when you're off doing other things, because it makes a powerful impression on the soul. I see. Now, we experience many types of Maya. And Maya's job is to counteract the effect of Baba. And there are a few Murlis in which Baba says that the power of Maya is equal to the power of God. So it's not small. And the power of Maya is also called the power of materialism. And it is this, you know what I was telling in the beginning, this thing that drags you down, this grossness, tamopradanness. And as BKs, we need to be counteracting it at all times. That means Raj Yoga is not particularly relaxing. If we, Baba says to us, you are a spiritual military, you are a spiritual army. And what does the military do? The military, you have your drill and you have your training and you get your jobs and you do your thing, within the military you have your uniform and so on. You have a few medals and stuff, which happens when you made it through a few battles. But every so often there will be a strike, right? And whenever there's a strike, it'll come by surprise, from a direction that is not expected, and you'll be ambushed, there'll be a surprise attack, and also it could be like really surreptitious, put a slight amount of poison in the water system so you slowly die, And so Maya will use all of these metaphors to get us to go back into body consciousness and to forget soul consciousness. And so we can believe that we're very soul conscious, but we're actually very body conscious. And so Baba has given us the powers, the 8 powers, and we need to sort of check out those powers. The powers are our weapons. And we have to make sure, as spiritual military, that our weapons are in good working order, they're clean, they're operating, and we have to practice them so that we're good at them. And we get all kinds of situations and circumstances in which we get to practice these powers. Accommodation, tolerance, cooperation, etc. All the different powers. And these powers are called powers through yoga. That means they're powers through bodilessness, where you can equate yoga with the ability to be bodiless, or the ability to be soul conscious, or the ability to be connected with truth. When you're connected with truth, it's easy to see anything that's false or untrue. When you're disconnected with truth, everything looks true. Everything looks fine. So we become lazy and complacent and out of focus, and we'll make excuses for the lack of quality meditation and so on and so forth. And then gradually our ability to resist Maya is undone, and our accumulation of yoga power gets used up, and then Maya can strike you dead. So that is normal. So whenever we come to Madhuban, it's all to do with, getting all of our screws tightened up. Because we can experience here, we experience ourselves being in a very, very high intensity vibration, where things which in your normal places may not be visible to you, they become visible in Madhuban. So this is one of the important aspects of Madhuban, and it's sometimes called a mirror or a palace of mirrors, because you can see things that are not normally visible. And what you need to use this for is to be able to see the self, to see where you are at. Why do we need to see? So that we know what to work on, so we know where to tighten ourselves up. There are many things that exist here to disturb us, and they're supposed to be there, because we have to be able to have meditation with too much noise going on, or with the temperature being too hot, or whatever, All these kinds of difficulties that exist are there to make it easier for us to see where we are weak, where we are susceptible, where we can easily be messed around with by anything that comes on in the physical world. Because being bodiless is all about not minding the things that you mind when you're body conscious. So sleeping with somebody who snores. Who sleeps with somebody who snores? Right? Do you like your own self? Yeah. Sleeping with people who snore can be very disturbing. And you have to be able to kind of adjust yourself so that the thing that irritates you doesn't. You can include it, you can live with it, you can work with it. The temperature may be too hot for most of you, yes? Or the cooler is too noisy. We have too noisy and too hot. But Baba has said, spiritual military means something or another is going to bother us in not just one at a time, but maybe 10 or 15 things at a time. And the only way in which we can manage those things is by being bodiless. Because when we're bodiless, sense perceptions do not take the form of irritations. When we're body conscious, they do. So whenever we have some kind of disturbing thing, it's one way to deal with it is to use that disturbing thing to try to find the place within yourself where you're actually neutral about that thing. And traditionally, it is said that when you're in love, you don't even notice those things, right? So going back to the story of Ram and Sita, Sita is in love with Ram. Being in love with someone means that your interest is very focused on that person, and consequently you're not at all aware of things that are nothing to do with that. So Baba is taking that human experience of being totally in love with someone and referring it to the relationship between the soul and God. Not something that you have to try to create, but something that you need to go deep inside to discover. Because the reality, the fundamental reality of human existence is the experience of love for God. It's the fundamental thing at the root of our existence as human beings. Because the human being, the raison d'etre of a human being is this: the experience of connecting with God. And through that connection, becoming complete. So everything that we do in BK is all about that. And also about dealing with the resistances to that. The more we give time and attention to understanding what he means by being bodiless, the closer we get to that experience. I see. And we also have to have good amount of patience, because this is really the focal point of our whole pilgrimage. So if it takes us a little while to get there, that's okay, because there's so many things that you discover along the way, so many things that you discover that are like wrong turnings. You go down the road of, oh, I'll become a famous BK. It doesn't get you anywhere. It's a cul-de-sac. Oh, I'll be a martyr. That's a cul-de-sac. You go down all these roads, and then you come back again. Get on the main track, and that track is to discover the place in your being where you are completely the dot, the point of light, connected with the point of light, and then the other point, the point of drama, that spinning thing, into which you place all experiences or all events that are essentially extraneous to your relationship with Baba. See, because what are we doing? We are returning to that point where I, the soul, leave this body and go. And that's the consummation of our relationship. And that is why we exist. We are either going towards it, or we're returning from it. You see? So the knowledge of the cycle allows us to place all human experiences within something that spins. So when you're working with bodilessness and using the cycle as an instrument, the cycle is called a yantra, it's an instrument. And he says, spin the cycle. In English. In Hindi he says viral, which is rotate. Now you have to see for yourself with what speed you're going to rotate the cycle. 84 births, so you might take 3 or 4 minutes to go through 84 births, and Golden Age, Silver Age, Copper Age, Iron Age. But you need to get to a point where you spin it fast. Once you've started to spin the cycle fast, what do you get in something that spins fast? You get a swirling mass, somewhat like the Milky Way. And as long as everything is swirling, you're not focused on any of it because it's swirling. So that means the knowledge of the cycle enables you to disconnect your focus of attention on something that isn't I, the soul, and Shiv Baba. You see? So that means it allows you to be free. It allows you to be bodiless, because everything to do with matter is in this off-white swirl of the spinning of the cycle. And so you use all of these things, and all of them come along in every murli. You use every murli, position yourself in all these different positions, and you will experience that it brings you close on a daily basis to that place in your heart where you have the intense, volcanic fire of yoga with Baba that frees you from this effect of the experiences through the five senses. And this is what Baba has told us, is you need to be free from good and bad, positive and negative. All of these pairs of opposites, they come in experiences through the body. And so one of the things that we also do with experiences through the body is we interpret them as metaphors for the relationship between either soul and Shiv Baba, the object of my interest, Because there is nothing more interesting than Shiv Baba. Okay, I will stop there. Thank you. Om Shanti.
करके खुद को छिपाया, सब करके खुद